Okay, we'll go ahead and start Finance Committee. We have a quorum present. Couple other members and mayors here. What we're going to do, we're going to first start out with ordinance 2022-28. And that is the basically the matching funds for the OPWC grant to the city. This is the city's portion for the Fairview Avenue project. And then from there, we'll go into 2022-29, the operating budget, and we got to end by 6. So any additional time we can go into the capital budget, 2022, 30, and of course we'll be meeting next week as well to cover anything we don't get done. So with that, go ahead and start with 2022-29 if Director Miller wants to give the background on this.
So this is 2022, 29.
I'm sorry, 28, the
Oh, the Fairview
Fairview
Avenue. So this, we want to have appropriations approved in 2022. We would like to have it approved tonight so we can sign the contracts and they can get everything going because they want to start construction in January, I believe, and they need to order everything. So if we can get it approved this year, we can move forward with the contract and be ready to go rather than wait until 2023.
So the contract will be executed when?
Pardon?
So the contract.
Maybe tomorrow.
Okay.
I know that they've been working on it.
You want to go over the numbers real quick? What's up?
I need Bob's computer. Yeah, so we made some adjustments to pay for this out of the street improvement fund. We reduced some contractual services, increased capital outlay, reduced debt service. But that's for the city's share of the construction. Then the general improvement fund, 350, is for the park portion of the project. So the city has the parking lot that's on First Avenue. We're gonna have that cleared and plant grass and do that kind of thing. They included it all in one bid package. So these are the two pieces, the city's share of the construction for 165, and then the city's share of the park for 170. So we just had to move some money between some accounts to make it work in the 2022 budget.
Okay. Any questions or discussion? If not, I will entertain, or I will move to approve.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next, we will go into 2022-29, which is the general operating budget. Director Miller or Mayor Kearns, if you want to briefly speak to it, then we have some department heads, guests to speak on very specific line items.
We have a presentation.
Okay.
And, we could go through that first, and then we don't want these folks to waste their time here, so I'd like for the group to prioritize the questions if they have them for the two chiefs and for Director Coker.
Okay.
All right, so we can start with the presentation. And basically the presentation is cliff notes of the budget book. So the budget book ended up being 100 and some pages long. And this is just kind of, I'm pointing out what I think the highlights are of the budget book. So the first item, hold on a second. Okay, is codified ordinances section 4.2. This is where our codified ordinances actually address how the budget is to work. It says an annual appropriation ordinance shall be approved by council from estimates submitted by the mayor, and then it must be approved in December of the preceding year. And then supplemental appropriations may be made by council as needed, and the director of finance and mayor shall supervise all departmental expenditures. I just thought it's good to know where all this process came from. The next slide is from page 4. This is our budget process. So we present the budget, the tax budget, usually in April and June, in that time frame, and this is where finance is prepared. This is kind of based on what we think is going to happen in the next year, what we think departments are going to do, but not a lot of work is done with the departments. This is basically just setting the stage for the budget and more work to be done. Then in September and October, we meet with the departments and we develop the mayor's budget. And then in November and December, we present to council, and that's kind of our budget review and public input opportunity. And then December and January, finance department puts it in the system. We get everything going, ready to implement it for the following year. The priorities and issues for 2023 were conservative spending during a time of volatility and instability and withholding income taxes due to work from home. That was a major concern. Recruitment, development, and retention of the city's workforce. Continued analysis of the city's organizational processes to modernize and improve efficiency and service levels. Facilities for fire, EMS, police, and administrative services. Infrastructure repair and replacement. Implementation of the economic development strategic plan and continued commercial area planning. So these were our priorities as we were looking at what we wanted to fund this year. This is a general fund summary. It's very hard to read, but it just shows you the revenue in the top section. So we have 3 years of actual and 2 years of estimates. And then the expenses are in the second section. And the difference between revenue and expenses is that bottom line. So when we're preparing the initial operating budget, this isn't actually in the book. We look at that $63,000, the change in fund balance. We want that to be positive. We want to do our initial operating budget, limiting our expenses to what our revenue is, because we don't want to start learning to live outside of our means. Even though we have a cash balance in the general fund, we can do some things. We want to operate in a manner that is limited to our means. So that's what that chart says to me. So on page 9, we start talking about the general fund estimated revenue. When we're figuring out the budget, we figure out how much money do we have to spend. That's kind of my first step. So you can see, you've seen this pie chart many times before. The biggest chunk is income taxes. This is general fund only. So the general fund, we're estimating, will receive $12,870,000 in income taxes. The next highest is property taxes. General fund will receive $2.6 million. So the bulk of our revenue is in those two pockets. Income tax we talk about a lot. You see this chart in your monthly report every month, but this is showing you 2019 through our 2023 estimate. The blue is our biggest component, which is withholding taxes, and you can kind of see where we would hope that in 19, 20, it would just keep growing. We've had a little bit of a drop off. It's not as bad, honestly, as I thought it would be. I think we're going to end, as of today, we have $16.3 million that we've collected, which is great, and we're estimating for 2023 very similar collections. We have it in there at $16.6 million. So the general fund doesn't keep all that. And on page 13, I kind of talk about those income tax commitments. So we start with our gross receipts, then we take off a portion for income tax incentives. And if you look at that number, in 2019, it was 1.9 million, then 3.2, 2.3. So it changes as the revenue from the companies with incentives goes up. We have to put aside a little bit more for incentives. When the revenue from those companies goes down, we don't have to put aside as much. So revenue's down, but so are our commitments to that. So we do a little better because of the reduced revenue and the reduced expenses. The next line item is the infrastructure debt trustee. I'm thinking for 2023, it's gonna be around 1.7 million, and that is 55% of the income taxes from Grandview Yard after tax incentives are paid. So we are going up to 55% next year, but because of work from home, taxes are lower in Grandview Yard, the debt trustee commitment is going down. And then we said 5% to capital improvements, which is around 830,000, which brings us to our 12.8 million for the general fund. So I know that can kind of be confusing sometimes, so I wanted to lay it out on the table this year.
So, I'm sorry, real quick one, I didn't catch it, the 55% for next year,
Yes,
that's the
we're at the height now. So we
bond
went,
trustees.
we started at 25% in 2014. Yeah, for 16. Then we went up to 45%, and now we're at 55%. So, but the number has gone down a little bit because the revenues have suffered. But we're lucky that other companies have kind of offset some of those losses.
How long do we stay at? Just
Forever.
A whole different conversation, but
As of right now,
the
we're,
life of
the current agreement is for the life of the bonds. So that's kind of the overview of the revenue for the general fund. And now we'll go to the general fund expense budget. So this is section 4 in your book. And then I kind of tried to put page numbers in there. If you wanted to read a little bit more about each of the departments, it's noted in the presentation. Overall, impacting nearly every department, fuel increased by $75,000. We had a supplemental this year. It was primarily diesel, was the driving force behind the increases. We've all seen the fuel come down a little bit over the weekend, so maybe we won't need all that money. That would be great. Health insurance increased by 44%, so that's a $79,000 increase. That's not factoring in any new positions. That's just taking who was here last year and adding 4%. In the administration, some of the increases, I try to just pick out what I think is something different and what is significant. For MORPC, we will probably have an OPWC administration fee, which is based on how much you receive from OPWC. This is just their fee for administering that program. You only get the fee if you get the money, so I guess that's good. We included $10,000 for communications consulting. We're looking at aggregation coming up. We may have other things, so we wanted to have some money out there to provide us with that opportunity if it came up. We included $15,000 for HR consulting and professional development. We've been trying to expand our training, improve our training, and this is where we put some money in hopes that we can do some additional work in that area. And then workers' compensation increased $20,000. Workers' compensation is we take a percentage based on our claims times our payroll. So that's how you come up with the workers' compensation. In the community planning and development department, we added a position. The net cost is $48,000. That we did have some intern positions that we got rid of, so it wasn't that's not the full cost of the position, but for this year, the change in the budget was $48,000. We included $50,000 for First and Grandview area
Can you
plan.
explain what that, is that Liz's position?
Yes, it is, yeah. We included $50,000 for the First and Grandview area plan as we continue to have some people come in and do specific plans for different areas, like we just finished the West Goodale. And then we included $25,000 for economic development plan execution activities. And those are kind of, as the plan is finalized, Liz talked a little bit about it in her presentation at the last meeting. So there's just some money to do some of those things as they come up. In the technology department, we added $10,000 for a learning management system. That's something that we're exploring right now that, again, could feed into our improved training that we're trying to do. And in engineering, we have an additional $25,000 this year for a pavement rating, which is done every 4 years. And this is what our street program and a lot of our infrastructure projects are based on, this pavement rate. In the finance department, we have income tax collection fees go up by $32,000, and that is 3% of collections. So it just varies as the collections go up, the income tax collection fees go up. We budgeted refunds the same as 2022, hoping that we won't have some of those outliers like we did this year for work from home. The legal budget was based on $30,000 a month, which is about what we've averaged for the last year. So that is a $60,000 increase for the year for 2023. In the fire department, we added 2 firefighter paramedic positions. That cost, the $223,000, is for a partial year, because even if we told Greg today to go hire, it would take a few months. So we didn't budget for a full 12 months. The police department is requesting a deputy chief position, and again, that's a partial year cost of $90,000. So you can really see, I mean, these are the changes that are above $10,000. The departments didn't really ask for or make a lot of changes. So, I mean, there's only a few little items that we really looked at and had to add into our budget. The service department expanded contract labor hours. They had somebody on staff for part of the year. That person is really working well, so they wanted to expand that to a year round. Finally, the Parks and Recreation Department, we made some change. We added some money last year, and then this year we looked at where they were, and they don't need some of their contractual services that they used in the past. Sometimes we would hire an arborist or different professionals, and they haven't needed that money for a couple years, so we took that out. And then we moved their resurfacing money to the capitals budget. So that's paths in the park primarily, and we can't do a whole lot for $10,000 anymore. These projects are becoming much bigger, so we just moved it to the capitals budget and kind of rolled it in with his sidewalk money. It made more sense, and the projects are often done together. And then the final item is the pool management contract. It increased due to wage rate increases and the impact of inflation on supplies. So this $87,000 is the budgetary change from the 2022 budget to the 2023 budget. You'll recall we had supplemental appropriations this year. That is part of, I mean, that really kind of would be part of this number. But we have seen an increase. They're planning on paying employees $15 an hour to be more competitive. That's what the going rate is at the other pools in the area. That's part of the change, and then part of it is just the impact of inflation on chemicals and those types of things that they have to purchase to take care of the pool. So that is the general fund. Then the outside funds, Chris and I talked about outside funds a little bit. This is money that has to be accounted for on its own. We have to keep it separate. So this is stuff like gas tax and different things that we've allocated for specific purposes. Grants usually have to be in separate funds. So this is all of these funds. We have 4 types. We have special revenue, debt service, capital improvement, and then custodial funds. Custodial funds are not included in the budget, but that includes mayor's court and Jed Z. So the city acts as a fiscal agent for other entities, and those funds aren't accounted for in this budget, but it's just kind of an overview of the finances. So the first outside fund that I think is of interest to you is the street maintenance and repair fund. These are in section 5, and this one's on page 33. This receives gas tax, motor vehicle license tax, and it's used to pay for our street program. So our street program usually is the one that we figure out how much money can we possibly do, and that's what we do. This year it's $600,000. Daryl would like to see, and our engineers think it's appropriate that a city of our size would have a street program around $1 million. So that's what we're going to work towards. But this year with Fairview Avenue going on and our share of that project and First Avenue, The money just wasn't there to do a full $1 million street program. The next
How will
outside,
that estimate be then?
we're at about $810,000.
Okay.
Yeah. The next fund is the yard TIF fund. A lot of money goes through here, we don't get to keep any of it. So we get 10.8 million in pilots. Homestead and rollback relates to the homes down there, but basically that's pilots as well. And then we commit a portion of our income tax. All of that money is passed through to the school, library, and infrastructure debt. But it's a lot of activity if you look at the city as a whole. The next fund I think of interest to council is the local fiscal recovery fund, which is the ARPA money. And in the book on page 43, I provided a detail of where all of the ARPA money has been spent or committed. A lot of it, as we discussed last year, was used for planning. We did some IT work, and then we used part of it for a recycling grant match. I think we still have a balance left, and if you look, 2023, I'm budgeting the balance to pay for architectural services for the new building. I think it was a good revenue source. We had some money out there, and it's something that we definitely are gonna be spending a lot of money on, so that's where we allocated the funds to. And you might remember that we were allowed to use it for any governmental purpose. Because of the loss in revenue, we had the freedom to use it in any way.
And that will zero out that fund.
Yes. The other fund of interest is the General Improvement Fund, Fund 350, which is on page 44. The total estimated revenue in this fund is a little over $1 million. That's $830,000 from income taxes, $168,000 from EMS fees. It receives 70% of EMS fees. And then $29,000 miscellaneous, which is actually a refund from RETA each year for their fees. So we put 70% of the EMS fees in there, and then we use that money when we lease our fire trucks, we lease our medics. That money can be used to pay for those vehicles. The total budgeted expenses for this fund are $1,023,000. $645,000 of it is capitals. We have $322,000 of lease payments. Then we have to pay collection fees for income taxes and EMS. I will skip through the capitals real quick so we can get through the other items. Other outside funds are the sewer improvement fund where we collect water and sewer surcharge. Ideally, we would allow this fund to build up so we would have money to do large sewer projects. We have used it as a source for OPWC loan payments. So we've been able to do some projects, but this is one that we continue to watch all the time with hopes of funding some more projects out of it. The Parks and Rec Improvement Fund receives inside property tax and hotel tax, and this is used to pay for debt service on park and pool bonds. It's not quite covering it, the revenue is not quite covering it, so it requires a transfer from the general fund this year to make sure we can cover all the payments. As we get new hotels, the hope is that some of that money will be used to offset those bonds.
Has the hotel revenue bounced back?
Last month was good, 2 months ago was good, last month wasn't quite as good, but we're getting there. I think we're hopeful that 2023 will be normal and will be good. Then the last two outside funds, the sewer improvement, oh no, we talked about that. Debt. I just did a quick summary of the debt. We use different funds to pay different loans. OPWC loans are typically supported by some kind of fee or gas tax. So the street fund, highway fund, and sewer fund all pay OPWC loans. Parks improvement pays for those bonds. Capital improvement pays for equipment leases, and then the debt service pays for the remaining bonds. You might recall the city took on an OPWC loan for south of Goodale. The TIF revenue, the pilots will pay for that. So we will start keeping a piece of the pilots to pay that OPWC loan. I'll just withhold that from the amount that's distributed. This is a schedule of all of our debt as of December 31st, 2022. Again, it's hard to see, it's in your book, but it shows 25.7 million outstanding. That includes those OPWC loans for South of Goodale, which aren't really factored against the city because they're covered by the TIF. But it's a good summary for you to see where we're at with all the debt the city has. One item I added to the budget this year, to the budget book, were the financial policies in section 7. These were adopted in 2016. A lot of you weren't here, but I think it's a good place, good reminder to see that we did set all these policies in place, and this is what guides the financial activities that the city takes on. In 2023, January 2023, we're gonna update all of these, and we need to add a post-issuance compliance policy. So Bricker and Eckler has already written that for us. It's just a rule for people that issue tax exempt debt. So that'll be, it's not in the book this year, but next month we'll be going through all of that, I'm sure, in Finance Committee meeting.
You'll explain what that means?
Yes, and it's all about when you issue tax exempt debt, you have certain reporting you have to do to the SEC. So we have to say, we can't issue debt and then go and issue a bunch more debt and then go and default on things. We have to tell them, report to them, so they can make sure we're doing what we need to and we're protecting the bondholders. But yeah, it's very legal, lots of pages of legal stuff. Then finally, I included a description of the appendices, just what each of those are, because I thought it might be helpful if you're looking through the book. We have, in Appendix A is the 2023 Consolidated Financial Schedule. This shows you everything, really. This is all the revenue by fund, all of the expenses by fund, and then the ending fund balance, what we think that will be. Ending fund balance always has to be positive. Then we have, I do an estimated revenue by fund that gives you a detail of every fund if you're interested. I included the annual appropriation ordinance and the roll-up for the general fund. Everybody likes to see that spreadsheet. Appendix D is the appropriation summary by fund. Again, it goes into a little bit more detail by each fund and kind of rolls it all up. And then finally, I have the capital ordinance and 5-year capital plan in the books. But I want to give the department heads a chance. I thought maybe Greg would go first, and then Ryan, and then Liz to kind of talk about the new positions that they're requesting.
Before we do that real quick, I'm sorry, but
No.
with 2022-28, the supplemental, we want to suspend the rules this evening and pass
Yes,
that, right?
please.
Okay, so I want to clarify that. When I made that motion, it was asked to suspend the rules as well. So just move to approve the rule suspension.
Yes, second.
Okay, all in favor, aye, okay. All right, go ahead, Chief.
You're fine. I appreciate the opportunity. First of all, I stand here realizing what a huge deal this is. Nowadays, our biggest cost of any operation, any business is personnel and its salaries and benefits. So I realize this is a huge deal. But as we're all here as custodians of our community and what we provide, we are asking for 2 additional personnel. This has been something my previous predecessors have asked and asked and asked. As far as we can tell, we haven't staffed an ambulance and a medic since the Big Bear days, since we had that terrible run of luck and we had to let people go and we couldn't keep our staff. Currently, right now, we have 1 shift that has 6 personnel and 2 shifts that have 5 personnel assigned. We're allowed to have 1 person off on time off, vacation, personal time, comp time, all of that. So between 35 and 42% of the time, we have somebody on time off. That's just the cost of doing business, vacation time and all that. So our minimum standard right now, per our bargaining agreement, is we can't drop below 4 personnel. So 35 to 42% of the time, we are operating at 4 personnel. And what that means is our EMS, we all know our ambulance is our busiest truck, and I've been telling you every month in my council report how our runs are increasing. Those are EMS runs. So right now, when we're operating at 4 people and an ambulance goes out the door, we have 2 people remaining in the firehouse. We can't do anything with 2 people if any type of fire run comes in. The minimum amount of people that we're allowed to put on a fire truck is 3 people. So every time our ambulance is going down the road and we're operating at that minimum of 4 people, the city of Grandview Heights cannot staff a second truck. We've had a number of incidences recently. One of the biggest ones was earlier in the year in January. We had the French Quarter fire over in Marble Cliff. That occurred when our ambulance was out on a run and we were at 4 people and the city of Grandview Heights could not send a fire truck. I went to that run, I was the incident commander on that run, and we used all of our mutual aid companies. They covered us, it was a successful outcome, but I think we played the odds. The second run was, the largest one, was our 2 alarm fire on First Avenue, the Eddington fire. We were operating at a minimum of 4 personnel that day. 30 minutes before that run, we had an EMS run that did require transport. Had that patient required transport, we wouldn't have been able to send a fire truck to that First Avenue fire. And you know the success of that was getting water on the fire in 9 minutes. And that was because of our crew. Our response times right now to get en route is under 60 seconds. To get on the scene in the city of Grandview Heights, it's 3 minutes and 11 seconds. Our mutual aid partners can't come close to doing that. Our total travel time when we call a mutual aid company in is around 7 minutes to get somebody from the outside of Grandview Heights in on the scene on a Grandview Heights run. I can keep going on. I can answer specific questions. These 2 people, these 2 personnel will allow us to have 6 people assigned to every shift, and our minimum manning will be 5. In no way does this benefit the fire department in giving our people more time off. We will still only allow 1 person off on paid time. Our local bargaining unit has agreed that they will voluntarily increase minimum manning to 5. That will leave 2 to staff an ambulance and 3 to staff an engine 24 hours a day, no matter if we have somebody off or not. Again, we're not giving anyone more time off. The sole benefit is to the community that we will be able to staff an engine and a medic 24 hours a day. So when our medic's out, we will have 3 people back to staff an ACLS fire truck that can go to the scene to deliver, life-saving care on any type of run, whether it's a fire, whether it's someone choking, whether it's a cardiac arrest. We have a paramedic staffed engine company to get there in under 3 minutes to deliver that care. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Chair, if
Yeah.
I may. The increase in runs, do you see a trend in why that is happening? Is it just because there's more people? Is it stressors from other areas that are taking neighboring units offline? Like what is causing that?
Everybody's busier. Every fire chief will stand in front of their elected officials and tell them they're getting busier and they're doing more with less. For us, it's not anything specific. On my last council report, our #1 chief complaint is abdominal pain. So it's not like it's overdoses, it's not cardiac, it's not difficulty breathing. It's a whole rash of things. Our runs are going up to our mutual aid partners, but our runs increase more of our mutual aid partners coming into Grandview. Our mutual aid partners coming into Grandview increased about 10.5%. Our increase to going to our mutual aid partners was a little over 7%. So we're bringing people in at a higher rate than we're going out of the community, which I thought was really interesting. But as far as our increase in runs specifically, it's EMS runs, and it's something as basic as abdominal pain.
Thank you.
But my concern is, as fire chief, is, it takes years to build a reputation that we have. And I think that showed with issue 32 with a 2-to-1 passing. It took Grandview years to get that, years of hard work, dedication, doing more with less. But I think you can lose that all on the next call for service we have if we don't have an engine company to send to someone when their house is on fire because our ambulance is on somebody with abdominal pain and we're operating at our minimum manning. I just think we can lose everything we've achieved on that next run if we don't meet our community's expectations.
Chief, or Director Miller, you made that. What's the line item amount for these two again?
$223,000 for the 2023 budget. I think we budgeted 9 months
We did.
of
I
staff.
think if we started now, I think 90 days to get through the civil service process and interviews and posting, it's pretty aggressive.
Right.
We'll have to work really hard to meet March. But I tell you, Director Dvorsky has left blood on the battlefield of dialing in our civil service, our laterals. I mean, everything is at our advantage to continue on and get the best staff we can with these two individuals. I think it's an incredible opportunity right now.
Chief, I'll say that we appreciate all your department does, and and in particular with how you had to deal with less in the past, since you've been here.
It's since the early 90s since we've ever been able to staff an engine and medic, and we have been playing the odds for a long time. But I appreciate you saying that.
Any other questions from anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just the annual, so the 9 months is the 230, so an annual kind of beyond 2023 is another 70,000, something like that. Just thinking beyond this, because this is not something that we're gonna want to we're not gonna pull back from the budget once we've achieved the staffing level and service level that we expect to have. But just to be transparent, moving forward on an
Absolutely.
annualized basis, it's gonna be
And there is not another
Yeah.
professionally paid fire department in Central Ohio that does what we do and operates with a minimum of 40. It's substandard.
Yeah, it's surprising. We were learning that a little bit, kind of in the last couple of meetings, and that wasn't something that I was necessarily aware of, and to your point, as we kind of went through this process, this fall, I don't think that's something that's, most folks are aware of or would expect from us, so, kind of appreciate you outlining what this means for us and what we will be able to achieve in terms of service.
I think from my first budget meeting with the mayor in the finance department, this was my first thing I brought up. I even went back to my job description when you guys sought out a fire chief to come into a rapidly growing community to possibly change service delivery. And this is exactly, why I came here. This is exactly the liability I saw, and this is exactly what I targeted, and that's why we're standing here now. And honestly, I think this will get us until we make our next benchmark, which would be staffing another medic, if our EMS runs years and years down the road. But I think this gets us to how we can, throughout the future, service this community the way they expect us to.
If I may, yes, of course, that's true. This has been, since I've been around, there's been 3 years in a row that this has been a topic during budget season, and it's been a weird 3 years. Obviously, 2020 was like, we don't know what's gonna happen, and then it got deferred again, so, but I think, to be fair, it's gone back, way back to fire chiefs. When I was on council, we added the one, and it was in part tied to Anthony Busaletto coming on, who we knew would be deployed, and this would be a major issue. So, but that was only 1 of 3, and that just 2 of 3 doesn't solve it. It's you've got to have all 3 because we're really not living up to our obligation, on one of those shifts to the best of our ability. We got to do all. That's why I brought it forward to you.
Oh, one other, Chair Smith.
Mhm.
I think what I heard when this was being introduced was, we're part of a mutual aid agreement with other communities, and I'm assuming this not only helps us in the ways that we just described, but also, I think what I was hearing helps us pull our weight in that. I don't know if that's a good way to say that to you.
It's accurate.
But I wonder if you could just speak a little bit to that as well.
It is. Just like we count on Upper Arlington, the city of Columbus, to help us, they count us when they're down. When Station 25 needs another run, they come in and bail us out, and it's our time to be able to do that too. And the biggest time where time makes a difference are the most critical runs. The cardiac arrest, difficulty breathing, someone choking, structure fire with people trapped. And those are the times that we need that second company to go in and help them, is just like we expect them to come in and help us at those critical times. And that's what these 2 additional personnel will help us do.
Thank you.
Nothing else. Thank you, Chief.
Appreciate support.
So as Director Miller pointed out for us as well, we're requesting a new deputy chief position, which is something that we've never had in the police department. If you are familiar at all with our rank structure, we're officers, sergeants, and then me. So we're very flat in terms of rank structure. This position would hold many different duties and responsibilities. Currently, as we operate right now, our patrol sergeants take on an enormous amount of the administrative duties that are primarily my responsibilities. They assist me with those. So crazy concept for the police. I want the patrol sergeants actually patrolling. I want them out on the street as much as possible and supervising the officers that are out there doing that job. That's their main mission and their main goal. And that's what I want them doing. So in order to assist them with that and get more personnel on the street actually patrolling, this position would help with policy creation, implementation, budgeting, allocation of resources, records, special events, which takes up an enormous amount of our time, especially with events like the Columbus Marathon, the Grandview Hops, taking up the main thoroughfares through our city and the heart of our roadways. Internal affairs, testing and analysis of our uniforms and equipment, scheduling, training, recruitment, maintaining all of our required state certifications. Those are just some of the limited responsibilities that this position would have and help me with. As I mentioned, many of those items are currently being done by some of the patrol personnel, and this would place them back on the street and alleviate that stress upon them. In addition to those duties, this would create an advancement opportunity for some of our personnel in a succession plan in case I was ever, not present or unable to take on the leadership roles of the police department. With the exception of my position, all of our sworn personnel are bargaining unit members. They're held to a contract. This creates a conflict of interest when I have to put one of them in charge because they're under the contract terms, but now they're also the acting chief of police, which is not under a contract. So it can be extremely problematic. And I can speak from experience on that because I was acting chief several times before I was appointed to the chief of police. And it does put you in some precarious situations in terms of personnel. The deputy chief would not be a bargaining unit member, and it would provide an opportunity for the police administration to confidentially discuss matters affecting the division without the union. So it would be a source of accountability, but also checks and balances for me. Because right now I make all decisions arbitrarily, basically, or with my patrol sergeants involved in that decision making. So this would be another executive level position to assist me with those decision makings. As I stated, we lack depth. Earlier this year, I actually met with the civil service, which, as you know, are residents of Grandview Heights, just like you, and invested in this community. I brought this to their attention that this was my goal, and they agreed that we did need this position to increase our rank structure and responsibility oversight, so to speak. This would improve the current rank structure oversight of our operations. We're arguably the highest concern for liability and accountability in this city. We have the most employees of any department in this city. And as one individual, my focus is often diverted in many different directions. For example, today I had a full agenda and I barely touched it. So it's never what I set out to be on any given day. I'm always pulled in different directions, and things that we don't expect. But that is the main focus and the main highlights of this position. So if you have any other questions about that, I'd be happy to answer that.
Any questions?
I do. I like questions. So this position you mentioned would be, is there anything new it would be taking on? Is it primarily taking away kind of the stuff that other people are doing so they can focus on what they're supposed to be focusing on? Is that kind of, or are there new things that this person will be doing that nobody's doing now?
New in the essence that we've never had this position before. I've been here for over 20 years, and this position is a necessity. I don't understand why prior administrations never really fought for this position, because it is necessary from a leadership capacity and just being efficient as possible. New in the essence of we're taking a load off of our patrol supervision and actually putting them in a position to supervise patrol, which has never really been done before. Crazy. But that's another thing that I think we need to focus on is we hired them and we expect them to supervise patrol officers, but we push so much on their shoulders that they are, in essence, numerous deputy chiefs split across all the shifts. And I need to condense that into one position that I can meet with and have face-to-face with and be able to efficiently run the division the way it should be run.
Thank you.
Chairman Smith, can I add a few comments?
Sure.
I remember why we did what we did. We, in an ideal situation, money permitting, we would have had this deputy chief position years ago. And what Chief Steins does extremely well is to get people out on the street focused on doing the jobs they need to do, and the results reflect that. At the time, we didn't have the fiscal wherewithal to hire this position. So our solution was that we looked like, how do we get the sergeants out on the street instead of inside doing paperwork? So what we did was, we figured out, and we got Beth, our police department administrative assistant, was our hire to get that necessary work done on a timely basis and get the sergeants back on the street. And so instead of going in the sequence we would have liked to go, as the chief indicates, leadership and then support staff loadout, we didn't have the wherewithal to do that, so we did the next best we could afford, which was to get the support staff, get the sergeants back on the street, and now I think his ask is to, complete the whole.
I'm sure you've seen an increase in runs as well.
An increase in
Runs, whatever your equivalent run.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't want to focus on the numbers of reported incidents, but certain incidents, we would definitely have an increase. Sexual assaults are down, but general assaults are up. Breaking and enterings are down, but thefts in general are up. So it goes through spurts like that. We always have a few a year where it's either a general area in the community that's getting hit hard or a specific crime, throughout. So it's very sporadic, but when those incidents come, we hit it hard. So we try and allocate our resources the best way we can, and this would definitely assist us in helping with that.
Absolutely.
And again, I know this is probably mentioned before, Director Miller, what's the line item for this position?
We budgeted $90,000 for this year. That is for 6 months.
6 months, okay.
So a full year would be twice that.
And that's including benefits?
Yes, that is all in cost.
If I may, I really don't think the redundancy aspect of this, to have a number two in charge, can be overstated, particularly for this department. And by nature, it's emergency, it's all consuming, it's 24 hours a day. People need to go on vacation. I mean, that's just a silly example, but the command structure of all the departments and the size of all the departments, it really is best practice to have this, and it's long overdue as well, and it has been discussed again since I took office. And we're bringing it forward now.
Any other questions? If not, thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
We've got not too much time left,
Yeah, would you like me to
about 7
say
minutes.
a few words? Yes, the time is running very short. Well, difficult to follow our safety services, of course, as what I deal with is not necessarily life and death, but it is opportunity. And we have a lot of opportunity right now and a lot of dynamic change going on in the city right now, as I think everyone's kind of aware. One thing I would say is that I think the planning and community development function is evolving like everything else in the city has. In the past, there's been growth in finance to kind of respond to the growth that occurred, and I think a similar sort of situation is evolving with planning and community development. There's a number of different changes that are happening. Among them that we've kind of gotten the two big developments going. Now those need care and feeding. And our additional opportunities are for smaller sites and many more of them, but each one kind of takes the same amount of time as those two big ones. Maybe not quite, but on the scale. So it's just going to be a little more time intensive to get each of these smaller parcels to redevelop. So that's one reason. There's a ton of change going on in the office environment, and there really needs to be kind of some attention to that in the near term. Our economic development plan lays out all kinds of activities, and to get many of those things done, we felt that it would be more cost effective to have a staff member than to hire so many consultants. Also, there are, with Director Beauchesne's retirement, there is some logic being studied to resituate zoning more closely with planning. That's something that's been going on in the region, and something that's kind of been happening here, and it is increasingly happening here, where I'm also taking on all of this just sort of standard zoning reviews across both residential and commercial properties. And so all of these things there's lots of regional things that are impacting us, Link Us, Rapid 5, and the Heritage Trail conversion that are going to just continue to put us in a very dynamic position. So all of these things kind of put together on top of course, the new buildings and multiple area plans and things that we're doing. My thinking is that we will be able to accomplish a lot more what we would like to accomplish with an addition of a staff compared to only using consultants for some of these things. And so really kind of looking to do our best for the town, and this is a recommended pathway.
Okay. In the little time we have, any questions? Okay, and again, one more time, just want to reiterate, what's the line item for this staff position?
This one, the impact to the 2023 budget was an increase of $48,000. It's partially offset by some intern funding. I think the all-in cost of the position was around $100,000. This is an entry-level position that we're looking at.
And that's with benefits?
Yes, that's with benefits. All of our salary numbers always include the benefits.
And that's specifically for planning activities.
Planning, zoning, economic development, it will, be training someone up and across the wide spectrum.
So you said that includes intern funds, are we not doing interns?
Correct.
Correct. At all.
We're building a facility to hold their offices.
Let's see what we
It's
get
not for
next
the
week.
interns.
Well, it's,
I'm sorry, did you just say
Are we
we're
sure?
not paying interns?
We're, just to clarify, we've had intern the past few years. We've actually decided
That's better.
this is a more effective way to go at this point in time. I'm sure the city in the future at some point will have an intern or two. But the continuity, the degree of supervision and, the intensity of that supervision required and kind of the full-time professional development nature of a professional staff person, we believe is the direction that is best right now.
And I think if we had available funds, Liz would love to have interns. It's just we had to make some cuts. There were some, other things that people had to make some sacrifices because we couldn't do everything we want. So this was, doing this full-time position is what we kind of chose, and we had to cut some things, and interns were one of those things.
And with the interns, I'm just curious, because I remember I think you had somebody from OSU and then Mark C, so they were all paid
Yes.
positions? Okay, thanks.
So for clarity, should I relay that to Mark C, or have you already relayed
We're
that?
in contact with Morpsey. I don't
Okay.
think it's necessary.
Okay.
We have also gotten interns from other sources, and it really kind of depends on the professional background they're looking for.
Okay.
For the next meeting, next week we have another meeting scheduled. If you guys have any questions or specific things you want to discuss, we'll go through the capitals. But if you have other things, give me a heads up and we can kind of prepare and.
Yeah, like as we did last year, just either myself or Director Miller just shoot questions to us. Yeah. So, okay, so we're just about at 6 now, so as Director Miller said, we're gonna meet next week, and again, any questions, let us know. We'll wrap up the general operating and capital, the capital budget, 2022-30, next week.
So Chair Smith, just because I had to come late today, with family stuff, you got through most of the operating this evening?
Yeah,
Okay.
the three department heads,
Okay.
police, fire chief, and Director Topper gave presentations, as well as
Melanie,
Director Miller.
this
I got
provides
those
a
in the
good,
budget book.
like, it's kind of, I told them, it's kind of cliff notes for the budget book with references to the sections and the pages, kind of the things that I thought were important and wanted to call your attention to. So this should be helpful.
Awesome.
And you can just email me too.
Michelle's gonna share her notes with me too, so, thank you, appreciate it.
So, go ahead and adjourn, and meet next week.
Same time, Chris? Is it 5 o'clock?
Someone, I thought it was.